So for our next session, we have our alumni panel, which will be moderated by Anita Khushalani. Anita is a 1987 grad of the College of Social Science. After graduating from MSU, Anita went on to earn her law degree from American University Washington College of Law. She's the founder and managing director of Worth Workplace Training LLC. This human relations consulting and training firm helps small to mid-sized businesses and organizations create equitable, inclusive work environments. Anita generously partnered with the College of Social Science to establish the Women's Leadership Institute Experiential Learning Fund and the Dr. Sarla DeVitas Khushalani Memorial Scholarship, which was named in honor of her late mother. She's a member of the New York Women in Philanthropy Committee, and she also serves on the board of the Women's Leadership Institute. So let us kick off this next session, and please give the panelists a warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I want to also take this moment to thank the wonderful team that put together this panel that I'm sure will be an engaging and interesting discussion for all of us. It's great to be here today. I'm excited to introduce you and to moderate today's discussion. Just to give you an idea about the format, we're going to spend a few minutes just chatting with these women and getting to know them a little bit, and then talk a little bit in greater detail about their philanthropic journeys. So without further ado, let me introduce these women. I'll start with Melinda Baker. She's to my immediate left. She's the Director of Dataset Strategy and Commercialization at Picnic Health. Melinda served on the philanthropy panel in the Women in STEM program last December. Next to Melinda is Elaine Irvin. She is the Business Assurance Partner at Moss Adams, LLP. Next to Elaine is Jessie Layfield Lewis. She's the Director of Global Procurement at IBM. Next is Christine Mason Sonerall. She's the Senior Vice President and General Counsel for ITC Holding Corporation. Christine is also the co-founder and executive board member of the Women's Leadership Institute. And finally, we have Amy Yoder. She's the CEO of QC Supply. She has served as commencement speaker for the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources and was the recipient of the Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering 2016 Distinguished Alumni Award. Thank you all for being here today. So the first question that I have, I'm going to just ask all of you, before we get into a more detailed discussion, if you could please share your name, where you're from, MSU grad year, and your colleges. Melinda, take it away.
So as she said, I am Melinda. I'm a 2002 graduate of the College of Natural Science within the chemistry department. Do you want to do?
Sure. You want to continue?
Oh, career or, yeah.
Sure, why not? So,
Okay, so-
if you wanted also, in addition to name, rank, and serial number, if you want to share your professional and personal journey after you graduated MSU.
Okay, so after leaving MSU, I went to Princeton University where I got my PhD in chemistry, and then did a postdoc in microbiology, and proceeded to leave academia and go into industry. So now I actually work within health tech, doing strategy and product then development, working within the pharma and biotech industry. So I don't do chemistry anymore, but I get paid to think. So
It's a great place to be. That's what I would say. My name's Elaine. I'm a 1981 graduate of the School of Business. I currently live in Seattle. I grew up here in Michigan in a town called Albion, which is south of here. My journey to get from Michigan State to Seattle involved leaving Michigan State, not thinking I was going to be in public accounting for my entire career, which I actually am and have been, and graduating in 81. For anyone who remembers 81, there really weren't any jobs. It was not the best time to graduate from college, and I did get a job in a public accounting firm. And I found that it was different than I thought it was ever going to be. And so I'm not going to go into the details why, but I ended up staying with public accounting. I moved to Seattle in 1985. I spent time with a firm there for 10 years and then left that firm and joined the firm that I'm with now, which is called Moss Adams. Just for you here in Michigan, Moss Adams is the west of the Mississippi brand of Plant Moran. So if you think of Plant Moran, think of us. We're west of the Mississippi. And I've spent my entire career working really primarily with construction companies and real estate developers, and have had a long, fun career at Moss Adams and held a number of different leadership positions there.
Wonderful. Jesse?
Hi, I'm Jessie Lewis, and I think the most important fact about me is I bleed green blood. I am a 92 and 94 grad of the School of Packaging. I graduated and joined IBM in North Carolina. I was there for probably 8 or 9 years. Then my family and I moved to New York, and I was there for quite a few years, and I recently moved back to relocate to Cary, North Carolina. I have 3 sons who are the joys of my life.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Mason Sonrel, and I graduated in 1995 from the College of Social Science with pre-law political science. And as one might expect, I then went to law school. I went to Indiana University for 3 years. I came back and started working in Michigan at a large national law firm where I was a trial lawyer for 10 years. And then I went in-house to be the chief legal officer at a company that specializes in energy, and I've been there for about 16 years now. I still live in Michigan. I live about 50 miles to the west and to the south. And my challenge today is that by 4 p.m., I have to be out of this outfit, in my jeans, in a sweatshirt, on a baseball field, rooting on my son against his biggest competitor as the starting pitcher. So if you see me blowing out of here or, wearing jeans, I'm the mom doing the transition today.
That's fantastic. I remember those days fondly, actually. My name is Amy Yoder. I'm a 1989 graduate of the College of Agriculture and was actually fortunate enough to be awarded a doctorate of agriculture in the December of 21. So recognizing my contributions through ag for the past 30 years that I've been involved in the industry. From a little town in Michigan, not too far from here, called Eaton Rapids. Live now in Florida. Got to Florida through all career transitions, and quite frankly, all mine. From the Pacific Northwest to Missouri to Chicago to Atlanta to South Carolina to Florida. So we've had been fortunate to live in a variety of different areas across the country, and I'm very excited and interested to talk to you all today.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to all of you. Christine, since you're going to be running out of here relatively quickly, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk about how you reconnected with your program, the college or MSU, and what that looked like and why that was important to you?
Certainly. And I know from the table discussion that I was able to hear a bit of today, I think I started like many in philanthropy and giving, which is I was raised to be a giver, and I had very humble beginnings. We lived in poverty and we didn't have a lot of money, but we always had time and heart. And so when I graduated from law school and I came back and settled in Michigan, here in Lansing, only 15 minutes away from the university, I really thought about all the people that had been so giving of their time and mostly their encouragement, because I was a first-gen student and I didn't even know how to use a bus when I came to East Lansing. So a lot of people took me under their wing, and they were very, very gracious with their time and their advice and giving me some practical tips. And so I knew when I got out of law school and started practicing that there's a lot of kids like me at this university. And so even though if you looked at my balance sheet, I was over $100,000 in debt for my education, I had passion, I had the heart, I had the time, and I certainly had the ability to help students see a brighter, better future and help them get there. So I really started just mostly giving of my time, and then it flourished from there.
Okay, great. Jesse, same question. Just how did you reconnect?
I don't know that I ever disconnected. As I started the conversation, I truly bleed green blood. So when I left the university, I always knew I wanted to do something. So it started very small, and it was a financial gift, but it was a very small. We were talking $25, $50, right? But I did that over time. And I think what really changed for me was really seeing the impact of what my degree had on my life and what it meant for my future and for my families, for my children, for my nieces and nephews. You know, when you hear them say, oh, I want to go to college because Aunt Jessie went to college, you know, that means more than any dollar figure I could ever give. So knowing what impact it had on my family, I wanted to make sure that others had the opportunity to go to school as well. So I started to increase my financial contributions as well as my time. Now that my children are older, I have time that I can give back to Michigan State and really find my passion. But I think a lot of times we underestimate the power of education in general, and Michigan State changed my life and ostensibly changed the lives of my children and my family.
This next question, I'm going to direct to Melinda first and then Amy. Do you remember your first gift to MSU and why that was important to you?
So I tried to go back and look and log in, but I do not know my password. So, but I have a feeling it might have been to the actual scholarship that I had when I was here. So I was able to actually just give a little bit of the money to that scholarship. But the motivation came from when I actually got my first real job and had benefits package. And it mentioned then that they had a match. And so I thought, okay, well, so this is easy. It was very easy to complete, and it was that was kind of how I got started and had the habit. And then I, gradually would expand who I was giving to. But the initial one was like, am I recognized, like the name of the scholarship, how that I had.
And was there anything in particular that inspired you?
I didn't pay to go here. So I walked away with no debt. So it was almost kind of I wouldn't say an obligation, but there's just this thing of okay, I got a really good education for free. So I should try to make sure that other people can have that same opportunity. And I actually am in a position to not have to wait until my loans were paid off. So I pretty much had that extra income that a lot of my colleagues didn't at the time.
Okay, great. Amy, what about you? Do you remember your first gift and why it was important?
Yeah, I remember it very succinctly. And so as with most things in my life, it didn't go linear. It was a little bit in a roundabout way. My first gift to Michigan State was literally 8 years ago. And how I actually got there was through another university. So I told you I moved around. So as typical, especially, in an age really before social media, Michigan State probably lost me, to be quite honest, right? And so what happened is we were in Atlanta. My oldest daughter went to Clemson University, and my youngest daughter also went to Clemson University. And so we got really active at Clemson, and we do a lot there. We give a lot there. And it was actually at one of those functions when someone asked me where we went to school, and I said Michigan State, and they said, why do you give to Clemson? And I'm like, well, because I have the ability. And then Rob and I looked at each other, my husband, and I said, we would not have the ability to give if it wouldn't have been for Michigan State University. So I actually made a call because, remember, I've given, so I knew the development, and I said, hello, my name is Amy Yoder. I'd like to give money to an unrestricted fund in agricultural college. And they connected me with a development rep who happens to be here, Tammy, and that's how I got back to Michigan State, and since then have been very involved and active.
Was there anything in particular beyond that inspired you?
I mean, for me, I wasn't a great student. I was a first generation student, and I laugh because if you would have asked me, I didn't think I grew up poor, but then when I sit and think that we used to have graham crackers for dinner on Friday until my dad got paid, that pretty much tells you where I stood in the socioeconomic class, right? It never dawned on me. But I am here because people cared enough to support me through that. My family was always supportive, but it wasn't monetarily for sure. And no one had ever went. So I got here kind of through my own and through literally between faculty and advisors kind of helping me along the way. And I would not be here nor may have made the career choices that I've made without the support. And it's really come from this university.
Great. Elaine, What has been the most valuable lesson you've learned on your philanthropic journey? And do you have advice for anyone who aspires to have a stronger relationship with the university?
That's such a great question. Through the years, as life evolves, you start to learn more and more about what's really important to you. And, when you first graduate, it's like, yes, I'm going to give $100 because that's what I have. But as you have kids, as you work, life evolves and you start to really focus on what's really important, as I said. And so what I found through time was, and it was already addressed, I feel like I'm going to be repeating everyone, is it's really about a passion that I have. And it's the passion because of wanting to spend not only my money, but my time and my talent to help make the organization be a better organization or a university or whatever it may be. But there's one other component, and this was addressed earlier on too. It's the power of the community. And when I look around this room and I see each individual here who is giving back to the university, there's tremendous power in this, because whether it's $100 or whether it's $1,000, it doesn't make any difference. And I want to give you a visual. I told you I work a lot with construction companies, and as always, we work with the AGC of Washington, which is a trade association for construction companies, and they do an annual Build Washington Awards. And my firm, Moss Adams, has always been a sponsor. And a few years ago, it was probably more like 10 years ago, I asked the question of why was there not a community service award? Everything was about the buildings or maybe the best safety officer. What did that look like? And I told the organization that Moss Adams would really like to have a community service award at this event, which they said, that's great, why don't we do it? So we did. But what I want to share with you is last year's winner. We interviewed the finalist, and this finalist, they were going through the discussion, and I will step back and say, it's not about a company having a giving event, because it's about a company, it's not an individual. It's their culture of giving, that this is an ongoing, that their giving is ongoing throughout time. But this was what really struck me. In the city of Seattle, they have in the summer the Northwest Harvest, which is, gets food for those that need food. And they always have the Food Lifeline competition, and all the businesses compete. And so this company competed in this Food Lifeline. And as you can imagine, when Northwest Harvest is promoting this, they're saying, well, for your $10, you can feed, a family of 4. Or for your $25, you can do this. Well, this company attached, believe it or not, a rubber ducky to Everlevel. And the competition within their company was, if you gave at one of these levels, a rubber ducky was put in the CEO's office. It was awesome. And so there was rubber duckies of different sizes. But what really struck me, and this was such a great visual, I wish I could show you the picture, is at the end, this office literally was filled with rubber duckies. They were on, it was on the chairs, on the floor, on the desk, on the bookshelves, multicolored, different sizes. It was amazing. But if you can imagine what that looked like and the impression it made on me, because there was a comment earlier about if you gave $10, the power of the community could make a bigger difference. And so if you could only imagine this picture, it was really about the power of the community, and that $10 adding together made a huge impact on those that are receiving the food. So, but getting back to Michigan State University, I had a great experience here. I appreciate my education. Education is really important. And it was such a great opportunity, and a great opportunity for me to help students succeed so that they can be successful once they leave the university.
So what advice would you give to anyone who would want to sort of embark on a journey in reconnecting and supporting the university?
I guess I would say, look to your passion, what interests you, and then connect with either the school, obviously we have a lot of individuals here that work here, but I love your comment about, I just called up and I asked. I did. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But, and I really also love what you said is now, after 9 years, you're so connected.
Yep.
So, yeah, make the call, make the connection, see how you can be involved. The school's a great school, and just be proactive on your own behalf.
Christine, what about you? What advice would you give to anybody who's even just thinking about how to get started?
I think not be intimidated about the thought of giving, and also don't discount what your gifts are, because as we heard from the discussion today, it's not just about the money. And I think a lot of times when I'm going to give to an organization, particularly at Michigan State, I like to think that I'm igniting something. I'm igniting some belief, someone believing in themselves or their idea, or maybe I'm igniting a passion, or maybe I'm igniting a life change for someone, just because I believe in them. And so maybe it's only $10, $25, $50, but it's enough to say, I care, I believe in you, I trust you, is, the comments over here earlier were, and, go forth and multiply. And so I think just whatever you have, whether it's money, whether it's time, advice, just start investing. And then I do believe in this concept of community, because when I reflect on when we had the idea for the Women's Leadership Institute, myself and actually a development officer here, Alex Tripp, we met in a Panera, we scoped out what we wanted to do, and we decided strategically that we were not going to ask for money, because what we really needed is bright women to come forward with their ideas and their passion and get it off the ground. We needed the elbow grease. And we knew that eventually we would have to have the call for the money, but the money was really secondary. And so just be flexible. And so we had all these meetings, and we went around and we talked to women, and we told them what our idea was, and we said, we're not here for money. We're here for your thoughts. We're here for your support. We're here for your network. And it probably was another 5 to 7 years before we started needing, more money and making the ask. But whenever we have an event, we always have people respond, because we lay out what our needs are, what we're looking for, and we're able to multiply our gifts. And so, you might have $10, you might have 20, you might have 1,000. Please do give, but then make sure you're talking to your friends who have like-minded passions, because you can really exponentially grow.
Do you think it was easier to ask for money once people were more engaged, period, because you kind of initially, the proposition was just come help support in any way you can? Do you think the two-step approach, for lack of a better phrase, was more successful or less, just speak to that.
Yeah, I think it was successful, and I understand that there's a lot of needs, and so people are trying to be discerning in how they gift and give their money, and we wanted to make certain that we had something tangible, and we wanted to make certain that we had something that we could demonstrate that the things that we were doing were really life-changing for students here on campus. And so, we thought of it as a product. We had something very tangible, and I do think it was the right approach, because really with our idea, we needed people who could put time in planning symposiums, who could go around and be mentors to students, or who could help with, internships and things like that. So it really was that elbow grease that we needed. And then as we've grown our program and we can demonstrate impact on students, it's fairly easy now to go out and get support, because we have students who are giving testimonials. We can show that, people are having internships and externships. And so it's measurable. And then people are willing to back. And so we've been able to get, frankly, millions of dollars doing it this way.
That's great. Jesse, how do you want to support the next generation of Spartans?
Great question. I think twofold. We talked about, your time, your talent, and your treasures. I think from a time perspective, I mentioned, I have children, they're older now. I have more time. Who knew I had so much time, right? Till they're gone. So I have more time to give. So I like to be more active on campus and some of the activities. I live in North Carolina, as I said, but be more intentional about traveling here and participating on the events here. Whether it be a capstone class, those are pretty fun, but they're a lot of work. If you haven't done them yet, make sure you're prepared. But I enjoy that. From another thing, just staying on the time and the talent, I think it's important. We've talked about mentoring. We touched on that before. We don't realize the impact we can have on others' lives just by telling our story, right? As well as role modeling. I'll tell you a quick story. My sons, they went to Catholic school and they had to write something about, an example of a good deed. And I just happened to be going through their notebooks, and they gave examples of, at the basketball games, that we'd get the raffle tickets, and I'd always give them money back, $20, $50. It wasn't anything substantial, but I'd give it back to the school. It was a fundraiser. But my sons noticed that, and they wrote that down on their sheets. Now, it's not to say what a great person I am, except to say that you never know who is watching or when they're watching you. So us telling our story, you all telling your story, whether it was $5 or $10, it could spark an interest in someone else's willingness to give and understanding the impact that $5 or $10 might have on the greater organization. So continue to be a role model and a mentor for the younger generation, as well as for my own personal family, and evangelize for Michigan State, because again, I bleed green blood. And then from a treasurer's perspective, I've had different levels of giving currently at Michigan State, and I have some ideas on some other things. So Brittany, I don't think she's here today, but I'll be talking to Brittany and Rachel on those. Oh, she is. Okay. On those ideas. But, it helps, some of the different fame, I think was one that we were talking about. Some of the different opportunities to give has sparked interest for me. So I will be intentional on that. And just adding on to that point, something else that has grabbed my attention is just education in general and the importance. One is getting, a diverse population at Michigan State, but that starts early on, right? It starts at the elementary school and the lower levels. And what is important there, particularly when it comes to children of color, is ensuring they have representation with teachers of color, right? So we have to be intentional and there to overall make a significant amount of impact. So that's a passion personally to me, because I think when people know better, they do better, but we got to start when they're young.
And before I throw this question to Amy, I just want to explain a little bit about FAME, which is a program that Jesse just mentioned. It's a program that's specifically designed to support kids who've come out through the foster care system. I mean, I'm not sure, how many other universities provide this kind of support and think so much about the different types of kids that kind of come through the system. So I just kind of want to give a shout out to FAME. But Amy, how would you want to support the next generation of Spartans?
I mean, I think echoing a lot on what Jesse said, I think about it in a couple different ways, right? So like I said, I was first generation student, and what I have seen is really the value of what a college education can bring in terms of really opening up opportunities. I think, to me, I always look at, and we were talking about this at our table, the programs that I give to, I always call them the unsexy ones, right? I kind of like those, because they're the ones that usually have impact to people, but they're not the ones everybody gives to because they're not really popular. Here at Michigan State, I wouldn't be where I am without the College of Ag, so we helped set up a scholarship for individuals that came from different backgrounds to go into agricultural engineering and do their projects. And I'll say what was really meaningful for me there was to get those interactions with students and what your gift actually means. I will tell you, getting that personal connection makes you want to do more, because it really means a lot. When we also at Michigan State, I look at athletics that don't get a lot of, I call them non-revenue generating sports, right? Because they're important. My daughter was a diver, and that was, and she dove in college. And, people watched it. She did a lot of work behind it, but you don't hear about it, right? Except in the Olympics, right? When we win. And you only win unless someone actually supports. So We've done that for Michigan State at Clemson. They separated university and started a brand new a college of science. So they didn't have anybody to start. They had nothing to start. So we gave a gift to start that, because I believe in STEM and science and getting people the most opportunities. And so for me, I think really it's about how do you find the passion within yourself. And then to me, with this university, the great thing about Michigan State is it's so diverse, it's so wide-reaching, it's global in scope. It really can be whatever you would like it to be. You really just need to find what means something to you, and I guarantee you there's going to be an alignment in some college or program or something that will actually make an impact.
I think that's an excellent point, that because of the diversity of programs that are associated, there's got to be a match somewhere. So, all right. Well, Elaine, how has giving changed your life?
Oh, it's changed it. When you think about the evolution of your life and how you get from, graduating from college and get to this point where, I am actually retiring in September because I turned 65 in June. And that evolution, number one, began when I was young. I grew up on a farm just south of Albion. Let me tell you, everybody in that neighborhood was related to me. Everybody was related to me. And there's the good and the bad of that. The good is the strong sense of community. Nobody was left wanting. Everybody was there to help everybody else out. Everybody had each other's back. Now, I'll tell you the small downside to that was, even though there was no internet, texting, cell phones, or whatever, if anybody got in trouble in school, somehow your parents knew before you even walked in the door. So your whole walk home was coming up with your defense as to why it really wasn't as bad as they thought it was going to be. So there's that. And the other thing that was instilled in me from the time I was really young is the value of education, and that education is a gift that nobody can take away from you. And so that became kind of the core of who I am and my giving experience, which is the strong sense of community. It's important to give back. It's important to be involved. And it's also important to have an education. So if you see where I give most of my money, it does happen to be down the educational route. When I say life evolves, it's like initially, you give the $100, you got kids, you're running around, life is frantic, and you're not really focused on an overall bigger picture as to what you want your giving history to look like. And as life continued to evolve, and I'm going to go back to the education, my son in elementary school, we found out that he was dyslexic. Now, I was obviously able to give him tutoring and the support that he needed, but there's an awareness that went on that not everybody has the ability to do that, and that people learn differently, and that we need to be able to support those that learn differently. And as you continue to evolve, and I'll even say as kids leave, and they get married, and I have grandchildren, but you have more time too. But one other thing that became very obvious, and as I got involved in different organizations, was education, unfortunately, is not equitable. And that became a passion of mine too, was even though what I do may be a small part of the bigger community, it's important, because if you can make a difference in one person's life, then you've made a difference in that one person's life. And so when I think about my journey and to where I am now, and I'm probably much more focused, but it's really about, what is my outcome? What do I want to have happen? What kind of change can happen? Because change can be small. It doesn't have to be big. And so when I'm making my giving decisions, that's really what I'm focusing on.
Christine, what about you? How has giving changed over the course of your life?
As I stated before, I was rather a small giver because that's all I had, financially, although I gave generously with time. And as I have grown in my career and grown in my ability, my economic status, I have really seen the power of what to me, it is tantamount to a few dollars. And when I say a few dollars, like, do not underestimate what $25 or $50 can do for someone. So really being able to see the power of those dollars. And I'll give an example. It's not actually a Michigan State example. But one of the things that my husband and I did a few years ago, because we've been touched by cancer, we established a fund at a cancer center here in Michigan. And the original gift was $250,000, which, I mean, I'm not a millionaire, and so, that was quite substantial to us. But I have to tell you that every month I get thank you notes, and my husband and I, we both get these thank you notes. And it is mothers and fathers, elderly, and they're saying, thank you for the $10 that helped me get to my treatments. Thank you for allowing us to have $80 to do a summer camp because I'm in treatment all week and I have no energy to take care of my child. Or, thank you for keeping the lights on as I went through this treatment. And so it's really, that to me, I cry, but I could cry right now, like thinking about that, because through those philanthropic efforts, I will touch more people than I will ever impact through my career or, going to baseball games. People, when they're in need, they will remember this forever. And again, it doesn't matter if it's $10, $1,000, $200,000, they remember. Because if you think about a time in your life when you've needed something, and we've all needed something, when it has been given to you, you don't forget. And so that, to me, that's what I want my legacy to be. And it's really just building others who will build others. And I believe in that with a passion. And so whether you have time, your talents, money, someone has a need.
Does anyone else on the panel want to speak to this? The idea of the small amounts versus the big amounts?
I mean, I can because I'm still really early in my career, so small amounts is what I have. But I think also, one of the things that I do is small amounts throughout the year. So at least Michigan State does offer a variety of different hallmark times in which you can donate. So that makes it a little bit easier to plan when you are still then developing habits and a budget. And so one of my favorite ones is during the Giving Tuesday kind of, time. And I actually have a few friends that are professors here. And so I'll usually hit them up with which programs are you interested in to make sure that I could give a little bit of extra if their college is doing something or but then I have my regular ones that I give to, so study abroad, because I did that and I enjoyed my time and it really gave me life skills that I didn't know I needed, but that I use every day as I moved into a global job of traveling internationally. I can do that because I stuck it out and study abroad. And so I have a tendency to give to that, but small. And then I give to my college's teaching lab because teaching lab was a class that I hated, but it gave me life skills that got me through all of my academic work. And so giving small amounts to that experience that I actually eventually, wouldn't say enjoyed, but took away from is really important. So being able to spread my giving out to multiple things but smaller makes me feel okay, I am having an impact, even if it's not a larger volume kind of than how donation. So attaching it to those experiences that I had. Yeah.
So I never thought that we would be talking about giving fueled by hate on this.
It was a life skill in chemistry.
I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, I think the one thing that you said that really resonated with me as well is you asked, what do you need? You asked people that you were speaking to, connected to, what are the program's needs? What are the teaching assistants, et cetera. And that's an important thing, I think, just to be able to understand if you are concerned about giving in a way that creates an impact, then certainly finding out what the need is an important part of the process.
Because I do have to say, I think the initial hesitation that I think a lot of our alumni may have in giving is that it's a big university, and so you don't want it to go into the void of the donation. So then I was impressed when I did my first one, how many programs were laid out. So it's not like it has to go into some void of like this large thing and you don't know where it's going to go. So I think that it makes it helpful
Absolutely.
how in that way.
If I could add one thing on that I think is really important that I've kind of learned over the past 10 or 15 years where we've been, I'm going to call it actively giving on a much larger scale, is the other piece that's really important, not only the small gifts, because those are important, but also the time. So the other piece that I've learned is as you're starting to bring people into the fold, when you get connections with people and you share your stories like we're doing here, what people realize that maybe thought about giving but they're not sure, right? Go, okay, I'm not alone. You had the same trepidation. You didn't have this huge plan all thought out. You really just looked at something that you cared about and wanted to make an impact. And that also is helpful. So I think that to me, part of our philanthropy can be not only the monetary or the financial, but it's really the communication and the talking about the passion. That helps bring people in as well. It really does.
And I certainly think that creates more of an investment. People become more invested in the outcome of a particular program or scholarship if they themselves have direct knowledge and have become involved in some way, form, or fashion, would you say?
Yep, I would agree. Yeah, it's just more authentic, right? It's not just a random email or there is something there and you understand it a little bit more. And to your point, it's not going into some big general void. It's going to something specific that you can relate to.
Yep.
If I could
Sure.
I could just comment on that point. For me, it felt no different whether it was $25 or $2,500. It gave me a sense of pride of knowing that I was using the gifts that I had to make a difference. And so I will say, over time, I got more comfortable. I got more confidence in knowing that my contributions were making a difference and seeing where they were going. And I had a sense of pride. And I'm proud to say my son graduated from Michigan State. And when I got the letter, he got a thank you letter from Michigan State. He made a $10 donation. So from a poor college student that he actually gave his $10 and didn't go get pizza, I was very proud. So
That's great. That's great.
I'd add to that too, because I think it is what is the need and being able to ask what is needed. And one of the greatest things that I saw, it was a product, unfortunately, of the shootings, which was a horrific act here on campus, and everybody was hurting. And all the moms that came to campus to give hugs. I mean, that's what the students needed. And I actually had a niece who was in Berkey Hall, and she was there with some international students whose parents are not anywhere near, and they couldn't easily get on planes. And myself and my brother and his neighbor came up to pick up those students, bring them some warm blankets, take them back to our houses so we could just hug them, give them food. And so just be cognizant, it's not always the money. It can be the hug. It can be the warm blanket. It can be, as I walked in here in the Communication Arts Building, did you see all the signs that talk about how great Michigan State is? And they say positive messages. Like, to me, that is giving. And there's more power. Sometimes there's more power to those types of activities than even the $10. So look for the need. Don't always think it's the money. And then, as others have suggested, just ask. Yep. Berkey Hall, for example, they needed couches because they were moving to a new building. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want to bring any of the furniture behind. Well, who doesn't have a couch or a chair or a table that they could give away?
Yep. Well, this last question is for all of you. I'll start with Amy. In just a couple of words, please share what gives you hope in our future generations.
Oh, I have more than just a few words, but there's, having interaction with this future generation on a variety of different levels. There's a variety of things. One, they're really smart, right? I mean, I look at what they've accomplished and where I was at that age, and I'm thinking, I don't even think I'd hold a candle today. The other thing is they're not afraid to be authentic, who they are, and I think that's really important because I think that will drive quite a bit. And then they do really want to go and do great things, and I think every generation wants to do that. But I think this generation seems to have more of a passion to do that than going forward. And so for me, that gives me a lot of hope.
That's great. Christine?
when I thought about this question, I think about passion. And I think this generation has figured out flexibility, because flexibility is often key to being able to follow the passions. And whereas maybe my generation, we were a little more regimented and adhered to structure.
Jesse.
2 words. The first one would be curiosity. I think this generation is more curious than ever. Who could have thought you could be millionaires by, videotaping yourself and TikToking? And I mean, who thought, right? Usually you said, go get a job, right? Well, that is their job. And there's a lot of millionaires out there, off of TikTok and these, I asked my son, I'm like, why are you watching someone play the game? Well, it's great. I'm like, well, why don't you just go play it yourself? But the guy's a millionaire for doing it, right? So I think curiosity, because they figure out a way, they're curious, they learn, they tread new courses. I appreciate that, and I think that gives us hope for the future, at least gives me hope for the future, that they're curious about learning and trying new things. The next word I would use is resilient. This generation survives mass shootings way too often, things that we did not have to endure when we were coming up. Kids at Michigan State, their second one, that's a sad statistic, right? But they're resilient. Look at this university today. That's evidence in itself, right? So resiliency and curiosity would be, and also don't forget the pandemic on the resiliency part as well, right? Things that we never imagined. My kids joke, oh yeah, I know, Mom, you had to walk to school in the snow. Oh God, that's my claim to fame. They always throw like, oh yeah, we know, Mom, you had it so hard, right? But really think about what they have. It's the anxiety that comes along with all those things. So curiosity and resiliency.
I could almost say ditto to everybody. I agree. I mean, your comment about how incredibly smart and composed these young people are. And yes, when I was in college graduating, there's no way I thought I was that composed or smart. It's just the individuals blow me away when I have the opportunity to interact. I agree. I'll use a slightly different word, but exactly what Jesse was talking about, the creativity, the resiliency, to be able to get up every day and have the energy and the passion and the curiosity to continue to move forward. And, I honestly believe that these individuals, and especially the ones at Michigan State versus some of the schools you were talking about earlier, but nonetheless, they can create change, and they will be change, and they're going to create a better future for tomorrow. And so it's exciting to see what's happening here in the university and how the university is supporting them.
And then, I would probably say, I think when I was going through school, they used to say to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, but I think that's like the wrong thing. I think this generation is uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. And they're committed to seeing something wrong and then changing it. And I think that's like a better lesson, because if something's uncomfortable, it's probably for a reason. And they're willing to ask the questions and then figure out how to come up with like the solutions to change things. And that's inspiring, rather than just going with the flow and getting that job and being in the middle and trying not to raise attention. I don't think this generation, they are about, attention and understanding how to make change in the world. And I think that's good.
I couldn't agree more with everything that you all have said. I'll step outside my role as a moderator and just will add a little bit by saying that one of the things that I've really noticed with the students with whom I've interacted is that they're just serious. They're serious people. They're serious about learning. They're serious about just absorbing as much information as they can and advice as that we can give them. And I don't recall being that serious when I was going to Michigan State, and I just really admire them. So, I think that all of our efforts in helping them will go a long way. I think we've been clipping along pretty well and are even a little bit ahead. So if anyone has a question or two that they would like to direct to the panelists, we can take maybe one or two.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Anita, for moderating. I actually am going to put you on the hot seat, if you don't mind, and sharing your thoughts about some of these questions. So I think for you, Anita, I was going to ask you, like, what was your personal journey to get interfaced with MSU?
There were different things that were going on. One of the things that I had wanted to do initially was to honor my mom, as you mentioned in the introduction. My mom was a single parent. She was, when I was going to college, she was doing her residency because she had to do it all over again after moving to the United States from India. So, she had two daughters. My sister was in high school, I was in college. And while she was making a decent living, it was certainly not easy for her to put me through college, but she managed to do it. So one of the things that that spoke to me was creating a scholarship where there was a preference given to a child of a single parent, just to make things a little bit easier for that family. When I broached the topic with my mom at the time, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. She said, no, I don't want that kind of recognition. But she passed away, and I was able to do it because then she couldn't tell me no.
So another part, Anita, how has your giving changed over time?
So one of the things that I think I respond to is a question, is a need. If somebody says we need this, I'm more inclined to respond to the need. There was one occasion in which there were a number of students who just didn't have, I think this was through the FAME program that I mentioned earlier, they didn't have a place to go over the holidays. And so there was an emergency fund created that allowed them to stay in the dorms during Christmas break. That was one need that I thought was important to fulfill. More recently, we've been talking with the folks at MSU about how there are so many kids who want to go study abroad or take an internship or an externship, but don't have the means to kind of live during that experience. In other words, if they want to work in New York, the work that they may be doing doesn't pay them enough to live in New York City. So we created a fund, it's called the Experiential Learning Fund, which allows kids to have these experiences off campus and support them during those opportunities.
Great, wonderful. So I'm going to open it up to a couple questions from anyone from our panelists. Are we all questioned out today?
I want more cookies.
There are still more cookies out there. So I'm gonna, I do have a question, and this is for all of you guys. And so I think it's a nice recap as we think about this afternoon and our time last night and today. As you think about the conversations that were had here on the stage, as well as at your table, I mean, what are the things that you're inspired about from today's work and being together? I'm looking at Amy. We have eye contact there.
I know,
just
I
'cause
knew
our
that.
names
I should have looked
are
at the
linked
floor.
that way. So
I should have looked at the floor. That was always bad. That's okay. I unfortunately did not get to come last night, but what I've learned from being here all day is I am more energized than ever on the opportunities that are here at Michigan State University. I mean, I thought Teresa knocked it out of the park talking about the research. I thought, our first group of panelists talking about just basic needs within their colleges, even though not every college was there. To me, it gave a representative sample of just the different pieces all over. For me, it just demonstrates that there is a need. You can find what you really are passionate about, and to me, giving back to the university that gave me so much is just incredibly important. So that's what I take away from today.
thank you. Christine?
I was not able to participate in the session today. I only heard about 15 to 20 minutes of table conversation. But what struck me when I came in is, number one, the sheer number of participants today, all of you times your network is huge with people with the giving mindset. And then really just the level of sophistication around the conversations. And I was struck about the question around trust and, trusting where you're giving your money. And then one of my table mates, her family started a church hundreds of years ago, which is still sustaining. And she was talking about how she can perhaps, how can she, even though she doesn't live there, make a difference? And I was thinking, okay, how do you trust an organization when you're hundreds of miles away and you're not necessarily in the community? And so I'm going to be spending more time thinking about that. And then, there was the conversation of when do you stop trusting and when do you stop giving and kind of move on. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do an inventory of the places that I give to, and maybe I'm going to make sure that I do have alignment, or perhaps I need to redirect.
That's great. Jesse?
But not for Michigan State.
Good. Let's add that asterisk right there.
Appreciate that caveat there. I would just say, kudos to both what you both just said. I mean, it's amazing, and I think Teresa knocked it out the park, as Amy said. I think the thing that stood out to me is just the caliber of people in this room. It's like, I want to be like all of you. Seriously, it's like some of the stories, just meeting, talking, understanding what's driving your contributions. It was very inspiring. So, to all the participants today, kudos for you for coming, showing up, representing, and sharing your stories, because it made a difference for me. And I think personally as well, there's a book, Tuesdays with Maury, and Mitch Albom. I read that years ago in the book club that I belong to, that we actually don't read much. We travel now, but that's a different conversation. But remember, the kids are growing up now, so I can do that. But that book really struck an accord with me, with reflecting on my life, and when I pass away, what do I want people to say about me, and am I living that life? And if you're not, you have time to change it. So this gave me an opportunity to reflect on the legacy that I want to leave and make sure that I'm doing the things that I want to leave behind for my legacy. So thank you.
Elaine?
The word that came to mind, and especially today as I was listening to everybody talk, was inspirational. Every single one of you, every story that I've heard is inspirational. It makes you want to go out and pursue more and do more. And actually, as I was thinking about this, I was hearing some of the bits and pieces of stories was, could everyone just come up here and be on the panel and tell me your stories, just so I can learn more and I can know more? But it also goes back to what I said earlier about community and the power of the community. And honestly, because you're inspirational, when I look around this room, there is so much power here and so much power for change. And I know that what you do is resonating to those around you and creating change there too. And it's just kind of like the ripple effect. And so thank you for everything that you've shared while we've been here. I really appreciate it.
So what have I inspired to do? I think be more intentional about my giving. Definitely in a position to do more than what I'm doing. A little bit weirded out. There's not a lot of representation from the sciences here, and so that's a little worrisome. And I don't know why that is. It could be because we spend a lot of time in postgraduate education, so it's a long time before you start making any actual money. And so, but I think one of the things that I didn't get an opportunity to do when I was here was more of a financial then literacy class for science majors. And I think this like the one thing I don't know is giving, investing, tax implications. So I think that's almost like keeps me from giving more because I don't know how to go about the process. And so I think maybe the fact there's not a lot of my classmates or people from my department here is a bad thing, but I'm talking to them tomorrow. So maybe a way of understanding, getting inspired to figure out how to make sure that like the alumni in my area actually give more often and sooner from leaving the university instead of waiting until that millionaire status happens, because it probably won't happen with our current economy. So trying to figure out how to do it more intentional, I think, is something that I'm going to walk away with.
Wonderful. Anita.
Okay, so I'm going to use this time to make a plug for the experiential learning fund that I just talked about. One thing I forgot to mention, I just found out that and this was just created maybe like 2 or 3 months ago. There are over 100 applicants, or close to 100, I should say, for scholarships, or applying for scholarships for this fund. Clearly, this is a need in the College of Social Science. So if you're so inclined, maybe you could talk to one of your contacts at MSU to see how you might want to donate to that.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Can we get a warm applause for all of them?